Thank you for joining us today. I'm Fabiani. I know some of you know me. I work at SMatt Energize, and I will be the facilitator today. This webinar is co-sponsored by SMatt Energize, Plug-in, and Resilient Swampscott. SMatt Energize is a nonprofit organization that works to increase climate action at the household and community levels. We support Plug-in, which is a collaboration of 7 communities, and Resilient Swampscott, which is Swampscott's climate action plan. All of those communities are working toward the same goal, reducing pollution. Before we start, I would like to ask you to force me to
your Zoom link that they sent you.
Bob.
What day?
Okay. Before we start, I would like you to answer 2 questions. I will pull the questions for you. Can you see the questions? Yes. We're almost there. We are all set. And boom. All right. Right. Thank you for answering those questions. In today's webinar, we will hear from Matt from East Coast Solar, listen to some testimonials, and have time for questions. During that time for questions, you can either raise your hand or type your questions in the chat. Matt, I will pass it over to you.
Fabiani, thank you. And we're excited to be here today. Again, my name is Matthew Honkonen. I am the Director of Business Development for East Coast Solar. We are a full-service solar contractor that's located in Worcester, Massachusetts. And we've been part of the Energize Wayland campaign for a little over 2 years now as a free professional resource for folks who are considering solar energy projects, battery storage on both the residential and the commercial side. So we're always here to answer any questions that folks might have. And for today's presentation, we will be going over a general best business practices for solar, how to get started if it is something that you are interested in pursuing, and some further details on how to choose the right equipment, incentive programs, and so on. So I will share my screen with you here now. We'll begin the presentation. As Fabiani said, if questions come up, please put them into the chat and we'll be sure to address those here just at the end of the presentation. We should have plenty of time. Okay, and just give me one moment here. Okay. So there's a number of different towns and cities that are part of this Metro West initiative, as you can see here at the bottom. And it's great to see the support from so many city officials at the state level, of course, really supporting renewable energy growth. Again, I'll be going through about a 15-minute presentation. We will have some testimonials from some folks who have installed solar at their homes that will be sharing their experience. And then we'll have plenty of time for some Q&A. Okay, so you're interested in solar and you might not be sure where to begin. And the first question really is, why are we going solar? What are some of our main objectives? The first thing that always comes to people's minds are saving money, right? We all pay an electric bill every month. Those rates continue to climb. Massachusetts does have some of the highest rates in the country. And solar, of course, is one of the best ways to help reduce that expense. It's also one of the best ways that you can reduce your carbon footprint at home. We're all looking for ways to become more sustainable, whether that's retrofitting LED lighting, improving our insulation, changing the heating and cooling systems of our home to fossil-free options. But solar, again, is really one of the best ways that you can help achieve those sustainability measures, not only at home, but then also to help meet the sustainability goals of your community, of the state, and of course, of our nation. I like to organize the first few steps here for folks to really try to understand what we're looking to achieve. The first thing I think homeowners should be asking themselves are what are my goals here for the project? Like we said, reducing the electric bill, sustainability measures. It's also important to understand the aesthetics, how it will impact your home, what's it going to look like, how does it affect the value of your home. We'll go into that a little bit further here later on in the presentation. But you want to think about, what are your key objectives for every project? Then you'll start researching some local contractors. The best way that I recommend is to go on Google, research solar contractors near me, start to understand what providers are there for you and what do they offer. The next best way is to go to the town. Again, like initiatives like Energize Wayland or Plug In are going to be great resources because folks there are able to offer their support, help connect you with companies that they may be aware of. And then, of course, speaking to neighbors, right? As we're walking around town, if you're friendly with neighbors, if you know of someone who's gotten solar, a referral is another great place to start. Of course, assuming that they've had a good experience with the contractor that they've worked with. I like to recommend folks get 3 or 4 quotes. Some people may choose to get more. Some people may only get 1 or 2. Obviously, that number is completely up to you. I think the more that you get, if folks are, I've worked with people who are getting 7, 8, 10 quotes, and it does get to be quite daunting. You're then managing speaking to all these different companies and going through a review process. So it can take quite a bit of work. But I think with sticking with number 3 to 4 contractors, you'll have a good understanding of the marketplace. And you can also look at resources like Energy Sage. EnergySage.com is an online solar marketplace. That is a recommendation from our partners as well, where you can put your information into a request, and contractors who are registered on that platform can reach out to you there to provide information on a solar quote. You would then review your options. So you've gathered this initial information, you've had some conversations with contractors, and you may be narrowing it down. Finally, then you would make your choice, right? And we'll talk about what factors that we're really going to want to look at when selecting a solar contractor based on those industry gold standards. I think it's important to also mention too that, of course, capital costs on the project is always important, but I don't think it should be the main factor. You want to understand the value of the equipment, the value of the contractor that you're working with, and that really should be, the main driving consideration for your choice. Not just the cheapest price. It is a long-term project. Typically, you will have warranties in place that will cover equipment for 25 years. So you want to feel good about moving forward with the right company. Now, as we're looking to evaluate best business practices and narrowing that search down, I've outlined some key areas of focus that I think are important to consider as you're going through that review process. So you'll want to look at the electric bill. That will be the first place that you start to understand how much energy your home is currently using. If you've lived in your house for longer than a year, then we'll have a good understanding of the past 12 months of energy usage. You can calculate up those 12 months, and then we come to our annual total. If you haven't lived in your house for a full year, and this is something that comes out fairly frequently, whether you've just moved in or perhaps you're having some renovations done, then a little bit of a deeper analysis will need to be done to understand what the energy needs of your home are and what they're forecasted to be for the future. Sometimes, if folks have just moved in, for example, we can look at the previous homeowner's electric bill. We can also look at the appliances that are in the home, the square footage of the home, the type of insulation, heating and cooling, and so on, to get an understanding of what those annual energy needs will be. Because ultimately, every solar system is designed for the energy needs of your home and for your lifestyle. So it'll always be important to share that electric bill information with the contractors that you're considering. You'll want to understand the condition of the roof and the type of roofing material. Of course, most common is an asphalt shingle. Roof ages vary widely, right? But typically, a roof that's new to about 15 years old would be suitable for installing solar. Anytime we see roofs that are beyond that 15-year period, going 20 plus years on an asphalt shingle, then there will likely be a level of degradation to that shingle that would cause you to want to install a new roof before going solar. You'll want to have a conversation again with the contractors that you're considering to understand what that expense looks like, if that's something that they can cover, if that would need to be outsourced, or what the expense of removing panels and reinstalling them in the future would look like if you decided not to replace the roof today. But it's important to have an explicit conversation about that. I've also mentioned a couple of things here in regards to setbacks. So the setbacks on the roof are now required by fire and building code. So there are certain buffer zones that need to be implemented on your solar design to conform to that new building and fire code. Your solar contractor should be aware of that. Aesthetics are important, right? Especially if we're installing on the front of your house. You want to make sure that that looks nice and clean. We always recommend an all black panel. Typically, that's what you are seeing for most residential projects these days, where you don't have the grid line separation on the face of the panel. You just have one nice black contiguous roof surface. That is typically what we're recommending for all of our projects today, and I think most of the marketplace reciprocates that. But ultimately, this is your home. It's your project. You should just get to decide how you want everything to look and where you would like to have panels installed. Your contractor, of course, is going to give you the best guidance as to the right roof surfaces that are suitable for solar. Now, the next two are some areas that you could experience issues if they're not addressed. This is something that we always address on every project, which are called critter guards and snow guards. So critter guards will prevent animals from nesting under the panels. They can cause damage to your panels. They can actually chew through the wires. So to prevent that, you would install a critter guard that would seal the gap between the solar panels and the surface of the roof to prevent animals from having access there. The other option is a snow guard. So much like on a metal roof, you have snow guards at the bottom drip edge that would prevent the snow from sliding off the roof, causing any damage or any injury. You have the same type of a situation with solar panels because it is a tempered glass surface. They can be quite slick and the snow will come sliding off there. So if we are installing over any walkways or entryways or high traffic areas, you'd like to address snow guards to make sure that you understand how to prevent the snow from sliding off if that's something that's important to you. You want to know what incentives are available to you. There are both federal and state incentives. The big one is a 30% federal tax credit. So when you install solar, you are eligible for those tax credits, which help reduce your tax appetite. Now, solar professionals are typically not accountants, so I always recommend that someone who's considering solar speak to their accountant to understand how the tax credits would affect their finances and have a clear understanding of that before you move forward with your project, so that you know what you're eligible for. You also have a state tax credit, which is $1,000. And then you have some smaller incentives, one which is called the SMART program, and another which is called the SREC program. And both of those are cash-based incentives that are based on your system's solar performance. So depending on how much energy your system is producing, you can get some small cash payments and some of these local state incentives. Your solar contractor should go over all of these incentives with you so that you know exactly what you're eligible for and understand how that affects the future of your system. Now, commonly today, we're seeing battery backup as an option that can be paired with the solar system. It's certainly not necessary for the function of the solar system. Batteries will allow you to maintain connectivity if your grid goes down. So if the power goes out at the transformer or at the grid level, your house would maintain power if it does have a battery with a solar system. So again, another key area to discuss with your contractor, but it's not necessary. We are seeing a rather slow adoption of battery storage, especially here in Massachusetts. They do come at quite a bit of a price point, and they're not necessary, but it is a nice peace of mind to know that you'll have full energy independence if the grid does go down. And here last we have the equipment, and there's a lot of different solar manufacturers on the marketplace. Your contractor will be sourcing equipment through a distributor, and that equipment is made typically somewhere in Southeast Asia. Most equipment does come out of the East, although there are companies now who are investing in some domestic manufacturing. So we do like to give those preference whenever possible. But it's important to know where your equipment's coming from. What are the warranties on the equipment? What's the wattage of the panels? What is the financial history of the companies that are producing this equipment to then really understand those main value propositions. Here, we'll just go over a couple of photos of what solar actually looks like on the roof. Solar panels are rectangular and they can be installed in either portrait or landscape orientation. Here, over one of our customers' garages, you can see a design that's all in landscape orientation. And this would be an example in portrait. Pretty steep roof here. We are missing one panel due to a vent stack. So this is pretty common where we're seeing somewhat irregular designs based on vents or other obstructions on the roof. You may be working around dormers, hips and valleys, and things of that nature. You can also see in this photo, we have installed snow guards on this array. So these small black bumps that you can see at the midsection, and then there is a black bar that sits at the bottom edge of the panels there at the drip edge that would prevent the snow from sliding off here. So if again, if that's something that you think would pertain to your project, this is a good visual representation of exactly what that looks like. I want to pause now, and I'm going to transition over to another page that I will share with you that goes over a quick solar design in our design software. So let me switch over. Okay. So when you reach out to a contractor, they will likely have some type of a design software that helps them understand what the layout will look like, the size of the roof. We use a program called Aurora. Aurora is the industry leading software when it comes to solar design, and it has a lot of tools built in here in order for us to be as accurate as possible without quite having to come out and do a physical site assessment. So you can see this is a 30 panel design. There are several different roof surfaces that were considered. They have one design here over the main roof surface, several others on the back of the roof. Everything here is to scale, including the environment around the home. So you can see that there are these green orbs. These are models of trees, although they're not the most aesthetically pleasing representation. They are accurate in terms of their height, the diameter of the canopy, and that tells us exactly how much sunlight hits these roof surfaces that could be converted to electricity. So again, your solar contractor will likely have access to a software like this, and they should be putting a design together that's as accurate as possible to help you understand what the system will look like, as well as how much energy the system will produce, which then translates to the financial savings for you. So there's a couple of different options on the marketplace. One is ownership, which is what we recommend, where you buy the system with cash. You may finance the system with the home equity line of credit or with the solar loan. But ownership means that you get all of the incentives. You own the system, the equipment. Uh, and so you pay upfront for that equipment to your contractor, and then you recover some of the incentives on the back end. But that will be the highest ROI and the best savings for folks is with ownership. Owning a system also improves the resale value of your home. Zillow and Sotheby's both have posted some great data, and they both reflect about a 3% increase in value to your home when you own a solar system. And we certainly feel that it does increase the likelihood of selling your home. I mean, who doesn't want to move into a home where you don't pay an electric bill anymore? I think that's obviously pretty great. The other option would be leasing the equipment or what's called a PPA, which stands for Power Purchase Agreement. Both of these would typically would be where the system owner would be the company installing the system. They would offer this to you at no cost. So you pay nothing up front. You're locked into a 25-year agreement with that equipment, and you do get a reduction on your electric bill. But this can cause issues with the resale value of your home if the potential home buyer doesn't want the lease or doesn't agree to the lease terms. You can experience some challenges there. You normally see about a 10 to 30% savings on your electric bill. And in these cases, the installing company will own the system, and they will retain all of the federal, state, and local incentives. So you would just get a reduction on your electric bill. Now, owning versus leasing or PPA, there are these models there for a reason, and certainly they all have value. But again, I think ownership certainly demonstrates the most value for folks. So here's a typical project timeline. So you've made a decision on a contract, you're moving forward with the project, and you're wondering how long it will take. We normally see about 3 to 4 months from contract signing to project completion. This is a step-by-step process. I'm not going to read through every point of this slide, but again, we do see about 4 months from start to finish. The longest period of waiting time is typically with utility approval. So after your contractor has come out, they've gone through their engineering process, they've confirmed the design, you would then submit an application to your utility. The two major utilities, of course, being Eversource and National Grid here in Massachusetts. The wait time for approval varies. It's usually somewhere between 4 to 8 weeks. I've seen projects fall outside of those timelines. And this is one of the most difficult elements of project management. is really interfacing with the utilities. Of course, your contractor's responsibility is to submit these applications and follow up on them in a timely manner, but there's nothing that contractors or the public can do to speed up the utility approval process. You really just have to let it run its course. But once you do get that green light, then your contractor will pull permits, both building and electrical permits, and then they'll schedule a time for the installation. Most installations are completed within about 3 business days. Again, depending on the size of the system, might take a little bit longer than that for larger designs. But certainly, within about a week's time, everything should be wrapped up at the house. You have some final inspections, building and electrical, as well as a final utility approval. Then the last thing you wait for is what's called PTO, and that's called permission to operate. Once you get that permission to operate, your contractor can turn the system on. It's fully live. It's connected back to the grid. And then from there, you're good to go for the future. All systems typically do come with a monitoring platform where you have the transparency into your system's performance. You can diagnose issues. And if anything does come up, if a panel goes out or you have some issue with your equipment, then of course you can reach out to your contractor to initiate a service there. Now, I know that was a lot of information, folks, but solar is again a fantastic investment. It's the right move from an environmental standpoint, and I think it certainly is the future of electric generation. So, if you're considering it, definitely start to take a look. Obviously, there's no commitment. It doesn't hurt to at least look around and understand what options look like. Yeah, I wish you the best of luck in your search, and if there's any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to open it up.
Thanks, Matt. That was a great and very informative presentation. Now I would like to call on Tom Black from Wayland to share his testimonial.
Very good. Can everybody hear me, or somebody give me a thumbs up?
Yes.
Fabian, you can hear me. That's all. I only see you. Hi, my name is Tom Black. I am in Wayland. I live on Jeffrey Road in the Pelham Island area. We've been solar users now for 5.5 years. It'll be 6 years this June. The process that Matthew just described was exactly what we followed once we decided to make the decision. What held us up for a number of years is our roof was very old, and we just kept kicking that can down the road, trying to decide what should we do with the roof. Should we replace it, fix it, or something before we did the solar decision? But in March of 2018, if you remember, we had a big snowstorm, and that brought down 2 trees, one of which fell on the house. And that made our decision very quick for us. We had to replace the roof. So in 2018, we replaced the whole roof right down to the sheathing, plywood, the whole thing. So we had a brand new roof going in 2019 when we installed solar. We did it all for the reasons that Matthew just described. We just thought the idea of producing our own electricity was very cool. Obviously, there's environmental benefits, but we wanted to do it just for the payback, but also just we thought it was the right thing to do globally and locally. The contractor we use is a company called Sunbug Solar. We went with them because our contractor, who'd done a number of projects on our house, various renovations, we have a 1960s era ranch, and so we're always doing projects in the house to bring it up to date. And in addition to his plumbers, electricians, and various contractors, he always went with Sunbug Solar, and he's a very thorough person, so we trusted his recommendation. So we sat down with Sunbug. Sunbug, by the way, now is part of Revision Energy. They merged in last year. So if you're looking for Sunbug, it's now part of Revision. But the same group is there, the same people are there. So we sat down with them, and once we sat down and looked at the numbers, it was so compelling. I hate the word no-brainer, but it was automatic when we saw the payback, we saw the cost of it, and the incentives, because we did take advantage of the 30% federal and the state, and we're also part of the SMART program, which brought the overall cost down a lot. And the rest of it we paid for a combination of savings and taking out a home equity loan, as Matthew described. We have 38 panels on the roof, and that pretty much takes up the whole roof on our small little ranch, because we wanted to accelerate the payback as fast as we could. At that time, the payback was calculated to be 6 years based on our prior bills. we're now pushing that to a little over 7.5 years, because the following year in 2020, we did a renovation and we added a heat pump to the house. And as you all know who have heat pumps, that's just sucks electricity like crazy right now, especially how cold it is outside. So that extended the payback time a little bit. But overall, this was the best decision we could have done, and a lot of fun. The inverter we have is made by SolarEdge, and we got the web package, so we could look by Wi-Fi. We can go right into the internet, and we can totally go at how much we're producing, what the charts are, what the month are. And it's been fun to watch and kind of brag about it with our neighbors. Our average electric bill is roughly $200 in round numbers, a little less in the summer and early spring, and a whole lot more now, but $200. We haven't paid that in almost 6 years. And it's always fun that I like to show my electric bill, Eversource electric bill. It says no payment due. And just as Matthew said, like, who doesn't want to have electricity paid for? So it's been a great decision financially. There's a great payback, but also we know we're doing a lot of good things to support renewables, which also we carried that forward when we did install the heat pump the following year. Maintenance, the only thing maintenance we have is we ask the fellows to come out every once in a while to clean out the leaves. We have a critter guard, as Matthew described, and leaves and other detritus get stuck underneath the panels. And I like to have that cleared out because I don't like trapping moisture under the panels. But other than that, they come out once in a while to upgrade the firmware. In fact, that's pretty much done now remotely. But once we got up and running, we had a few tweaks and a few wiring problems that had to be resolved in the first couple of weeks. The next 5.5 years, it's just set it and almost forget it. And it's been fun to look at the negative electric bill and get our payback. So that's our incentive. I can't extol the virtues of going solar anymore. It just works, and I was very impressed with the numbers, and the fellows at Sunbug and now Revision have been very helpful and very supportive if we have any questions. At the time that we didn't know the coaching group existed, so unfortunately Sunbug got dozens of phone calls from me because I ask a lot of questions and dumb questions. But from now on, I recommend talking to the coaches.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. Next, we will hear from Martha in Swampscott.
Okay, thank you. For some reason, my camera's not working, so I apologize for that. I had a system reinstall done because I had a problem with the computer. So anyhow, hopefully you can hear me. We installed solar in 2022. The contract was signed in the fall of 2021, and the system was up and running in the spring of 2022. So similar kind of time frame that was described prior. We chose SunPower. We did get a few estimates, but I felt like some of the sales pitches were very aggressive, and I did research on my own to look at which companies were highly rated. And SunPower was one highly rated company, and it also produced the panels. So they manufacture the panels, I believe, out of San Jose in California. And unfortunately, they're not in business anymore. So I think they had some issues with their supply chain after the pandemic. Great experience. We have a 3.2 kilowatt hour system with 8 panels. So it's not a large system, but we don't typically use a lot of electricity. So only with 8 panels, it produces more energy than we consume. And I took a look today. I've got an app on my phone. So even today in the winter, we're producing a little more energy than we consume. Although in the winter months, we are more in the hole. Overall, I think we have exported 1,700 kilowatts hours of energy to the grid over the lifetime of the system, over the couple of years that we've had it. So we haven't paid electricity almost since the time the panels were installed. The cost was about $13,000, but with credits and incentives, the overall cost was closer to $8,000 with expected 7-year kind of break-even point. So great experience, no issues at all with the system, although we did run into a problem with a roof leak, and we did have to go and uninstall the panels and get them reinstalled. So we were, kind of out of commission for a little while. So I do recommend that if your roof is maybe a little bit older, to go ahead and do that new roof and, avoid that problem. Aesthetics were important to me. Luckily, we face the roof where the solar panels are faces south. So we do get really good energy production out of our system. And again, from an aesthetic point of view, where the conduits are located, the meter safety shut off, I really, worked with the installer to make sure that the placement was what was okay with me. I didn't really want them to be in the front of the building or very visible. So that worked out pretty well. And the only question I really have is with the SMatt program or SREX, for some reason, I'm getting a check of 50 cents a month from National Grid, and I have no idea how that's calculated. It doesn't come with any information. It's just like a check for 50 cents. So, and I'm not sure how to find out or follow up to see if that's accurate or not, or if anybody, on the call can provide any advice on that.
Matt, you
So
want to
anyhow, a no-brainer to do solar for me.
Matt, you
I
want to take?
can,
Yeah.
no, I can quickly address that. Thank you, Martha. With your SMatt program payments, well, I suppose, is your installer still in business, or it was directly with SunPower?
It was directly with SunPower.
Okay. Was there a local company that actually put the panels up?
There was, and I think that there's somebody who's taken over the service agreement for SunPower.
Okay. So if you have contact information, I would encourage you to reach out to them, because they can help understand, especially with the SMatt program, it depended on which block you were installed in. So the nature of the SMatt program is a declining block model. So as more and more folks get registered in the program, the incentive declines. So it would depend on which block you were in. And also, if you look back at your contract or your proposal, what you were estimated to make for incentive payments, that likely should have been a part of that original assessment. And you can go back and cross-reference that to see if you are indeed making within range. And if you aren't, then yeah, it's definitely something that you should address with the contractor.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Martha. Thank you, Matthew. Nick from Natick, are you ready to give your testimonial?
Sure, yeah. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. My name is Nick Pandolfo. We live in Natick. We bought this home in 2021. And I was at the time a member of the sustainability committee in Natick with Jillian Wilson Martin, who's lovely, and just climate conscious. We came in, the condenser, the HVAC unit that was here, the central air was quite old, and so we replaced it with a ducted heat pump unit. And then shortly after, we started thinking about solar providers. Natick, Framingham, I think in Ashland, were running a program with heat pump installer and geothermal. There were like different options. We met with that company that it's just, the name of it is completely escaping me right now, but I've texted Jillian on the side to ask. We came out, we felt pretty strongly about having a battery on the house, for times when we might lose power. And so the reason we ultimately didn't go with them had a lot to do with the way our house is laid out. Where they needed to put the battery was inside the house in an uninhabited room. There was only one of those rooms in our house, and they needed to run like some hundreds of feet of copper like back and forth on the house. That was going to add a significant cost to the project, and we were like, we don't really want that here anyway. So we started searching other vendors, and Tesla actually makes a power wall, and the power wall is
We lost connection.
He's frozen.
Yeah.
Maybe Fabiana, why don't we go to some questions until we get Nick back?
Yeah.
Matt, have you been looking at the chat there?
I have. If you want, I don't know if it's easy to just kind of start from the top and I can start to work our way down. Great. So Cam Wilson had mentioned that he had solar installed, but he's still receiving a monthly bill plus the electric bill from the installer. Cam, I don't know if you want to unmute and we can have a quick conversation, but was that with a system that you owned or you leased the equipment? Um, it sounds like it might be a lease or a PPA where you have that bill and then you also have a surplus of more of an electric bill. So that sounds like, two things could have happened. Either the electric usage went up at home, which would result in obviously a higher bill, or the system isn't producing quite what it should be, and then in that case, then that's something that should be addressed with the contractor. Again, you can always go back if you've got your monitoring service. You can go into your monitoring, you can see what your system has produced, and then you can cross-reference that with the numbers that were provided on the proposal from your contractor to make sure that you're falling within range. And if you're out of range, right? If the system was designed to produce 10,000 kilowatt hours, but now you're only producing 6,000 kilowatt hours, then that's an issue, right? And then that's something that should be addressed. But it's tough to say, without taking a closer look at Cam's system as to what exactly is going on there. Let's see. So Mohammed had said, are there a set of rules or guidelines for selecting between ground mounts versus roof mounts? So you have both options available to you. Obviously, you need to have the space in the land or in your yard to be able to accommodate a ground mount. A ground mount is typically going to be a greater upfront cost because you do have to build the frame that the panels are attached to. You then have to trench a conduit back to the house or the structure where everything would be wired into. So there is a greater upfront cost, but it is an advantage if the roof is not available. Other than that, you'll want to reference local zoning guidelines. Typically, construction needs to be done. There's a certain buffer zone off of your lot line and so on. Some towns may have input on the visual impact in your yard, although that's pretty rare. I've only encountered that once. But otherwise, yeah, you would just look to your contractor to help you find the best solution. Let's see. Okay, Mohammed had another question. When selecting the option in production, should we also consider future add-ons such as electric vehicles? Yes, you should. So that's always the question. We look at the electric bill and we'll calculate the last 12 months of energy usage. We come to our annual threshold. I'll just use a round number. Say you're using 10,000 kilowatt hours annually. But if you're considering an EV or you are considering transition to heat pumps and right now you have fossil fuel heating sources, then that's something you absolutely should consider. Whether or not you can accommodate that future energy demand will really depend on how much space you have on your roof compared to how much energy you're currently using. If you're in a position where you can generate, 130% of today's need, right, and you have that extra energy production, you should be able to store that as energy credits through your net metering program on your electric bill. But there are some regulations to pay attention to there as well, based on the size of the system. That will help delineate what type of eligibility you have for net metering credits. So again, it's a conversation with your contractor that I understand, does it make financial sense to overproduce if that opportunity exists? Let's see. Okay, Stephen Mills just had a whole house generator installed. Are there issues with connecting a solar installation to a home electrical system with a generator? No, the equipment is all pretty much agnostic unless you were installing a solar system, a backup battery, and then also in conjunction with a generator. I have seen that configuration. It's pretty rare, but if that were to be the case, you'll want to make sure that the battery does have compatibility with your generator so that there's a continuous power supply there if the grid does go down. But if it's just solar plus generator, then those two can interface together, no problem. Okay, let's see what else here. Folks are talking about, let's see, CL mentioned using Energy Sage. Again, it is a good platform. There's pros and cons to their platform. It can get it can just get daunting. I think you can have up to 5 or it might be 7 contractors that can reach out to you to initiate contact and put a design together once they've expressed interest in your project. So it can be a lot managing communication there. I think John had mentioned, or someone else, sorry, Alan had mentioned, they do have advisors that can help you sort through those quotes and kind of guide you in the right direction. They obviously are not recommending one contractor or the other, and they're just trying to help you objectively look at that. The other thing with Energy Sage is that contractors who ultimately sign contracts through Energy Sage do pay a fee to Energy Sage, although it's free to the consumer. As we know, nothing is ever really truly free. So the fee is a percentage of the project. So typically it's ranging between between $1,000 and $2,000. So that's why we talked about I like the recommendation of really reaching out to companies yourself, right? Doing that own research. Now that you've watched this presentation, and I'm sure you'll further do that research. You can save that money, right? Because I'm sure some of that is built into the marketing budget for contractors, but ultimately some of that cost does get passed on to the consumer. So you can avoid that by just reaching out to a contractor directly.
Sorry to interrupt. Before you answer the next question, Nick is back, so we should hear his testimonial.
Sorry, I apologize. It's very bad timing on my internet deciding to stop working, but I've used the hotspot now. I'm back in. So I think, I'm not sure exactly where I got cut off, but we have Tesla panels and a power wall. It's been really great. We actually had a funny, about a month into getting permission to operate, we started getting a relatively large electric bill, which should not have been the case because our system was oversized, for our current usage, for the reasons Matt were saying. We knew we were going to get a heat pump. We knew we were going to get an electric vehicle in the future. So we sort of oversized our system with that in mind. And it took me quite some time to deal with Eversource and Tesla. And they were sort of pointing fingers at one another. And finally, Eversource came out and realized they had installed the wrong meter. They had not installed a net meter. And so all of the production from the solar panels was being viewed as consumption by Eversource. Anyway, they fixed that problem, and ever since then, it's been wonderful. We overproduce 10 months out of the year. I mean, last year we export 6,000 kilowatts. So it's pretty significant. And that shows up as credits. So we receive view as when we get an electric vehicle, it'll be like free gas, for the car. We did just actually 3 weeks ago, fully electrify the house. So we got rid of our oil boiler, put mini splits, which you can see one of them right there, downstairs, and an electric water heater. So we're now fully off, no electric bill since we've had it. And in fact, the opposite, we're gaining credits, and now no reliance on fossil fuels. So I'm taking full advantage of the solar panels and with the heat pump system. So super pleased with everything, and happy to answer any questions that folks might have about it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your experiences with rooftop solar. We still have time for a few more questions, but before anyone leaves, I would like to ask you to take 2 minutes to answer a few more questions, please. Let me go back here and share with you this. One more minute. I think we are all set. Thank you, everyone. All right, Matt, do you want to keep reading? Do you want me to call Mohammed? He has another question, and then Kara, Lawrence.
Yeah, I just have the chat paused where we left off. So Ellen had mentioned that she lives in the woods in a shady area. She was told there was too much tree cover, but maybe wants to look at another assessment. And I think that would probably be a good option just to make sure that that initial assessment was done to the best of their ability. Not every roof is suitable for solar. You of course do have to have some level of sun exposure to the roof. So with the design software that we talked about, that should be able to tell you exactly what the height of the trees looks like compared to the orientation of the roof and the exposure, and then ultimately figure out exactly how much energy could be produced by a potential system. So yeah, I think another assessment would be good, and you can pretty easily tell if your site would work or not. Okay, so Kara had said, is the 30% federal tax credit expected to continue with the new administration? That is the question that's on everyone's mind. And if I had a crystal ball, I would certainly tell you, but I don't think that we are going to lose the tax credit. The last time we had a change in administration, we did not lose the tax credits. Of course, Trump has been vocal about his distaste for things like EVs and wind, but he hasn't mentioned solar. So I'm hoping that that's a good thing. I think the industry is kind of poised for some type of a shift, but so far I haven't seen any press releases that have stated any reduction in the solar tax credits. But I think if you're considering a project like this, and you've watched this webinar, and this has answered some questions for you, then I think it would probably be better to make a decision sooner rather than later, just because the future is a bit uncertain. Even if there were to be some change to the tax credit, let's just say that they did reduce it or try to eliminate it, that wouldn't happen until the next year, right? Because we're now already into 2025. So I think you do have a year to go before potentially there could be any change. Okay, let's see. Where were we? Sorry, it jumped away. For inverters, how do I pick solar versus Enphase? Mohammed had asked. It's a big question, and it's something that unfortunately I can't just cover here in a couple of minutes. Enphase and SolarEdge are both of the industry leaders when it comes to inverter technology. Inverters are the second main piece of equipment that take the DC electricity that the panels produce. They convert it to AC energy that your home uses. I prefer microinverters. That's been my preference for many years now, especially in the residential space. Microinverters have some very clear advantages over a single inverter, mainly being that it is a decentralized approach to rooftop solar. If one panel fails in a microinverter based system, the rest of the panels will continue to produce electricity as they normally would, whereas you have a greater reduction in energy through a central inverter, or what's called a string inverter. So my professional recommendation on residential projects is Enphase, but SolarEdge is still a good option. I would encourage you to look at the financial health of both companies. Unfortunately, SolarEdge is not doing so great financially these days. So that's another thing is to think about, the longevity of these companies that you're investing into. Okay, time for a few more here. Let's see. How can I locate a solar coach in Framingham? I'm sure Fabiane and maybe some of the other coaches can help
I
assist.
shared a form that people can fill out, and then I will connect with a coach in your community.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
That's great. Thank you. It looks like we're at the bottom of the chat, but anyone else that has questions, Any other feedback? I'm happy to help address that here for you. And I should say too, I'll certainly be available offline. If anyone would like any of my contact information, any of the presenters here, Fabiane or Ellen, I'm sure can put you in touch with us. We do cover all of Massachusetts, except the islands. We don't do Nantucket or the Vineyard.
This is Ellen Tone from Energize Wayland, and I just want to say thank you to Matt. I think we asked Matt to talk about solar installation, not just representing his company, but just talking about the process that you would experience as interacting with the solar installer and vendor. And so, Matt, I appreciate you providing a good overview. And my husband John's on the call. We put our system in John 2010, and I think if you get like 3 quotes, that will not make you crazy. 7 will make you crazy. But it's good to get more than one. People have a different perspective about where they would put the panels and how they would design it. And you learn something when you get more than 1 quote. I don't know, Matt, if you agree with that or thoughts about that.
Definitely. Yeah, my recommendation is 3 or 4. Usually, I think you can get a good understanding of the marketplace. We talked about good ways to find contractors. Referrals are the best. If you've got someone who's worked with the company, if you're friendly with a neighbor who's got solar, and then also to Energize Wayland, plug in all the resources that we have here at the cities who are participating in these initiatives. There's some great solar coaches who can help guide you through as well. Oh, you're muted, Ellen.
Matt, there's a question in the name of your company. It's East Coast Solar, not your company, the company you work for. We
Yep.
actually knew Matt in Wayland because he had worked for a previous company that I'd worked with. And so we found his customer service to be good. But again, you should always get multiple quotes and look at prices and also get references. Were they good to work with? Just like you pick anybody else.
All right. Any other question? Okay, it is 8, so we should be done. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I will be sharing the recording in the next few days. If you have any other question, please, you have my email, I guess, but I will share in the chat. So if you have questions, I can connect you also to anyone that joined us today. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you all have a great night.
Thank you.
And we will in the follow-up email, Fabiani will send link to the recording and the slides. Someone just asked for the slides. We can send Matt slides. So, and thanks for those who did testimonials. It's always, nice to hear from real people who installed stuff. So thanks, 3 of you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Fabiani, thanks. I always forget to do the poll. So good for you for doing that. So, all right, Leslie, you gonna put solar